Hello and welcome. This is class number 30 of the UPSC Mains Answer Writing Initiative. So this is the 30th consecutive day we are completing 1 month of coming here every single day at 7 p.m. and trying to remove the fear of UPSC Mains Answer Writing from you. What do we do here? We discuss a previous year question and also give you homework for your own practice, which you can send me, and many of you are sending me on my email ID, which I am reverting to by evaluating it. Also reminding you once again, if you want, you can have the PDF of these lectures. All that you need to do is become a part of the Telegram channel. The link is in the description of the video, and also all of the initiatives. For example, we are running the Decoding PSIR through Answer Writing Initiative and the quick revision series for prelims. All that you will find in the description of the video. You can check it out. Click on the link of the playlist and check out those initiatives as well. Now let's begin where we are. We first have to remind you once again, if you are new here and you have no idea about how to start answer writing, please do this. Go to class number 1 of this series. How to do that? Check out the description of this video, click there and you will see the link of the playlist. The name of the playlist is UPSC Mains Answer Writing Initiative, and go to class number 1. In the first class, initially we had discussed about how to structure your answer, how to write the introduction, the main body, the conclusion, how to structure your answer, what to write, what to avoid. All these things are mentioned there. Please check that out. It's not a very long video, it's a short video. You can be very clear about that and then you come back. So now that you have come back, let's see what is the question that we will be taking up today. From 2023 GS3, I think this is the last question from 2023 paper that we are taking up. Give out the major sources of terror funding in India and the efforts being made to curtail these sources. In the light of this, also discuss the aim and objectives of the No Money for Terror conference recently held at New Delhi, November 2022. It's a question from internal security. It's a question mainly about terror financing or terror funding. Now, if you look at the second part of this question from this, second part of the question is very, very specific. They are saying that recently there was a conference held by the title No Money for Terror in Delhi. What were the points of discussion? What were the aims and objectives? These kind of things are slightly tricky because you can't really take a guess. If you know what this conference was, what was the aim, then you can write it. If you have no idea what was discussed in the conference, it becomes difficult for you to take a chance or take a guess. So the second part is slightly tricky because it is too straightforward. It's too to the point. The first part basically gives you more freedom because you have to tell what are different sources of terror funding and what is it that the government is doing to curtail it. So this is what we'll be doing. First, writing about the sources of terror. Now, what are the sources of terror? Financing. A lot of governments allegedly support terror financing. For example, from our point of view, Pakistan is doing that. If you look at it, let's say from Israel's point of view, Iran is doing that. So a lot of countries, lot of sovereign governments rather, have been behind this terror financing. Then there is black money. There are hawala transactions. There are also other sorts of illegal activities, organized crimes such as kidnapping, etc., extortion. There is also drug trade, illegal drug trade. For example, how Taliban is earning most of the money even today is Afghanistan does not have a lot that they can export, but they do have certain drugs that are grown in that part which they can export. So these are the major sources of terror funding. Then what is it that the government is doing now? If the question is open-ended, like here the question is, what efforts are being made? So here you can write about the laws also, and if the government has created a body, both of these can be written. If the question would have been what laws has the government introduced, then you would have to strictly write about the laws introduced by the government. But since the question is open-ended, what efforts is the government making? You can write about the laws and any new authority that the government is creating, that will also work here. So these are the things that we will be doing. Now in the introduction, what do we do? Some people would say we can define what is terror funding. You can, but see, terror funding does not need a definition as such. When you say you can give a definition, it has to be a word that is slightly technical. that needs defining. Terror funding, everyone knows these are just two words. Terror funding means money that is coming into fund terror activities, as simple as that. So I don't think in this case defining terror funding will be a good way forward. If in case you have a fact, if let's say you have read a recent fact about how much money is flowing into terror, or any recent report might have come out about terror funding related, then that will be a very good introduction. If you have a recent fact that you remember that this much money is going into terror, or this country's GDP or this part of the country's GDP is going into fighting against terror, something like that, something related to terror funding or something related to efforts to stop terror funding, because that is what the question is about. If you have a fact about that, that can be a very good introduction to go ahead with. So you can go ahead with that. But if you don't know that, we'll start from a very generic thing. This is a kind of a safe intro. Not the ideal intro, we are just playing safe here. Again, as I said, the ideal intro would be some fact and report about terror fund. Now, when I say fact, it has to be from authentic sources. You can't write, I have read somewhere or some report has said this. No. Again, as a UPSC aspirant, you have to be very clear and certain about your sources. So when you're quoting something that a report said this, you have to mention which report. You have to mention which organization. You can't just randomly mention a data. So if you have a fact or a data that you're confident about, that you're sure about 100%, please do write that in the intro. That will be a very good beginning. But if you don't have that handy with you, that which will be the case in most of the scenarios where you would not be able to remember a lot of stuff, this is where you have to go with a very generic intro like this. Ever since our independence, we have witnessed various kind of terror and insurgent activities. Over the years, we have learned and tried to evolve many ways to tackle terror funding and related activities. So basically, we are trying to give a connecting line between the intro and the main body. Again, I am repeating, if you have a fact around terror funding, terror financing, please mention that in the intro. That will be even better. So we'll first talk about what are the major sources of terror funding. These are not the only ones. Whichever ones you have in your mind, at the top of your mind at that point of time, feel free to write that. State sponsorship, as I told you, Pakistan, Iran, from different points of views, it is no secret that Iran has been supporting organizations such as Hamas, Houthis. So this is all a proven fact. Counterfeit currency. When the government of India introduced demonetization, one of the set goals that they had was to stop terror activities, to cut down terror financing. Was it successful or not? That's a debate for another time. But at least that is one of the aims. So it means that the government also understands there's a connection between counterfeit currency and the fact that it is being used for terrorism. Organized crime, as I told you, when you plan certain kidnappings, etc., extortion can also be a big way. We have seen in northeast part of the country, a lot of insurgent groups get their funding through these activities of extortion. Hawala is illegal transfer of money. So illegally you transfer some black money from one place to other, hiding it in some kind of a system that is called a Hawala system. These are major sources of terror funding. By the way, if you have read the second ARC, one of the reports of second ARC had 15 reports. One of them was about terrorism only. And in that report, they talked a lot about terror financing as well, how to stop that. So if you have read that, you can very easily answer or quote that report here as well. Government efforts, what have they done? As I told you, because it's an open-ended thing, they're asking you whatever efforts you can. So you can write from both laws point of view and also from point of view of new bodies created. NIA, that is specifically body created to fight against terror cases in India. The UAPA, we also have the NAT grid, which is a centralized library of all crime related information which different agencies can access. The problem that earlier we had was that since police belongs to the state, every police had their different database. So if one criminal, let's say, is missing in some state, other state might not have access to that data. So there was a need to have a national database which has been done through NatGrid. The government has also started the Samadhan doctrine to reduce left-wing extremism, and one of the points in this doctrine is to stop access of funds flowing into the hands of these organizations. So these are some of the things. Again, not saying that these are the only points. If you remember other points on the day of the examination, please feel free to include that as well. Second part of the question was that recently there was a conference held, the No Money for Terror conference in Delhi. What were the main objectives? Now, if you read about this conference in the news, it becomes a very easy thing to write. If you have not read about this, it becomes difficult. Now, let's imagine a situation that you did not read about this conference, okay? Let's imagine a situation that you have no idea what happened in this conference. Now, what do you do in this case? In this case, what you do is you apply kind of common sense. If there is a conference that is being held on the topic no money for terror, obviously the first objective will be that the countries should stop terror flow, should stop the flow of money into terror organizations. That is the most generic thing, right? So you can at least write this. If nothing else, you can at least write this. It's a very generic point. Because this was the entire point of the conference, so they would discuss curtailing the flow of money into the hands of terror organizations. Other pointers or other aims that were discussed, to set up a secretariat that would ensure that there is collaboration and cooperation amongst the countries. It won't act as an investigative arm, but just a collaborative secretariat office kind of a thing, to investigate new emerging threats and methods of propagating terrorism. There were many other objectives as well, but these are the major ones that we have written here. Again, if you don't remember what, or if you have not read about this conference, you can write a very generic point, at least the first one. And this is how we'll conclude it. Without writing anything new, we can just conclude it by saying that India should be on its toes, because we have always been prone to terror activities because of our neighborhood. Through several measures, India has continued the fight or the battle against terrorism, and God willing, we will continue to do the same. This is something that can be as the conclusion of this answer. Here is your homework. It's not a question from previous year paper, so you'll have to work slightly harder. You won't be able to find answers of this one. Price control and export restriction are some of the most often used strategies by the government of India to bring down inflation. Assess the impact of such policies on local Indian farmers as well as the global trade dynamics. I have given this question because, as you know, whenever there is an increase in price in, let's say, onions, tomatoes, what the government does, government says that the farmers can't export onions now, so that the supply of onions in our domestic market increases and the prices fall down. What impact does it have on farmers and the global trade dynamics? This is what you will have to write. Think about it. I've told you earlier as well. If you don't understand the question while practicing answer writing, feel free to search for data online. The only condition is that you should write in your own language even after you search for data, because only then you will learn. So write from your own language and see if you are able to write this particular answer. If you want, you can send it here on this email ID. I'll be happy to check and give you a feedback. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye. Have a good day. Jai Hind.